Hi, and welcome to the Tattoo Teacher podcast, where we get to know the person behind the professional, going below the surface of what we see. Join with me as I talk with some incredible individuals from around Australia and the globe. My guest this episode is the amazing Trudy Barrow. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with her as much as I did. Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and good ever what time of day or night it is that you happen to be listening to this. We are on the Tattoo Teacher podcast, and tonight's guest is the amazing Trudy Barrow. Trudy was a design teacher, is a design teacher. I think it's one of those things that you might step out of a classroom, but you'll always be a teacher, a freelance designer, and works for an organisation called Cleeps. Now, that's a great bio, but anyone can find that about you, Trudy. But how would you describe yourself?
That's a good question. So I love design, and I have always loved design since being a little kid. I trained to be a theatre designer and worked in theatre design for a while. And I was lucky. I got to go to RADA for a couple of years, and I got to work at the National Theatre for a couple of years. But ultimately, I decided that maybe education might be a good path for me. So I did a PGCE and converted to being a teacher. But because I came to education having already found my passion in life, which was design, I've always wanted to stay in design education specifically. That means that I've been a design technology teacher now for a long time. Won't say exactly how long because it'll age me. And I recently, just a few months ago, stepped away from the classroom for the first time to work for an organisation called Cleeps here in the UK. Cleeps looks after the health and safety advice for schools and organisations and institutions to do with anything to do with practical work. So predominantly science, design, technology, art, construction, but also that health and safety advice has to be embedded within the teaching and learning and the value of teaching and learning, which is kind of where I come in. And so I've also fallen down into the AI rabbit hole that many of us have. And I have really focused my research and obsession, shall we say, within the world of design. So I've been exploring over the last 12 to 18 months AI tools to do with design education specifically. And I also work in that area, freelance, visiting schools and running CPD on how to use AI in curriculum. So yeah, it's an exciting time. I miss the children a little bit, but it's still early days. Especially miss the older ones, the GCSE and A-level students. But I'm really, really enjoying this new world that I found myself in since the start of September.
Wow, that's quite a journey from theatre production, designing theatre production, working for the Royal. So RADA is Royal Arts Design.
So RADA is the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. It's famous for producing a lot of British actors. But I was actually lucky enough to get onto the theatre design course. It was a postgraduate course. It lasted 2 years. It was very, very intense. And there were only 3 of us on the course. So it's it was a postgraduate opportunity. And we got to design the sets and the costumes for those future actors to perform on. And all the performances were then public, so anybody could go, and they were real theatres, paid for theatres, and they were often the showcase for the actors to find their agents, etc. So it was a great opportunity, and I loved theatre design. I really, really did. I just ultimately something changed, and I thought, actually, I think being a teacher might be where my vocation lies.
Wow. So from the theatre, classrooms are a theatre anyway, aren't they?
Well, they are.
We're on show. We've got to put on a great performance almost every day. But I guess what really drew you to the classroom? I mean, because working in a theatre in a production company, I mean, there would be challenges each and every day, and you would have, I mean, the hours probably were crazy, but the transition in, I mean, you say you found a vocation, which is amazing, and I think those teachers like myself, I've been teaching for over 20 years now. And it is a vocation. It's not just a job. The guys who come in and unfortunately who treat it just like a job because they think they're going to get the holidays
Mm.
soon leave. But you can hear it in your voice. You have a passion there. So how did you transition?
So it came about because I got the graduate program at the National Theatre, which meant that I worked in the digital drawing and design office. So I was doing all the computer aided design for the scenery, for big shows, in on the South Bank in London. And I did enjoy it, but something was missing. There was something niggling, and I couldn't really work out what it was. And I was very junior in the role, and I was often given other things to do other than the core bread and butter of the job, which was the computer aided design. I did a little bit of events design. I did a little bit of sort of, they had a lot of fundraising events that they needed somebody to design. And I really liked being as creative as I possibly could. And some of the small cog in a big wheel stuff where I was designing, where I wasn't designing, I was drawing for another designer, I found quite dry. And
Okay.
I liked having the creative ownership. So they started to give me little creative jobs. And then one day they said, we're going to run a summer school for graduate theatre designers to learn how to use the computer aided design program that we all use. Maybe you could run the summer school. So it was a bunch of postgrads in their early 20s who came to the theatre, and we shut off an area, and I led this CAD course. And I thought, this is actually really good. I really enjoy this. This actually has quite a lot of creativity in it, because I'm designing the course materials and I'm thinking on my feet, and I am talking to people, I'm engaging with people, I'm not just sitting at my computer all day. And I actually really enjoyed doing that. And I should also say that both my parents were teachers, so education was always there. Both my parents were primary head teachers, so they were in education for education. They didn't come at it like I did from a different specialism. They both trained as teachers and got right to the top of the job. So I kind of knew what it entailed, and I knew how happy they'd been, and I knew the work-life balance that it came with, and what wonderful parents they were. And I aspired to maybe have a family one day, and I thought maybe that lifestyle, maybe that creativity that comes within education could work for me, especially if I'm teaching a subject that I'm really, really passionate about. So that's why I chose to teach design and technology.
Oh, that's fantastic. So that answers perfectly my question and I forgot to actually ask it, but usually my first question to my guest is what is your why? And you've just captured that from the parents. So teaching is in your blood, to creativity, to a passion, to an experience that has led you to the classroom. Do you think all those experiences have helped you become a better teacher rather than now there's and as a generalization there are just so many amazing teachers who go from school to college, university, and back into the classroom again, and they're amazing and do wonderful things. But do you think that the experience of outside of a classroom and outside of an educational institution um, gives a different dynamic and something just a little, I guess I want to say an X factor, that helps in the classroom in a different way?
Well, I definitely think that I had anecdotes that I would tell my classes from the theatre. If I was teaching So, for example, I might be teaching the value of mood boarding, and then I would talk about how when I used to do a show, I would rip things out of magazines and stick them up all on my desk wall, and it aged me a little because now mood boarding is very digital, whereas I was literally pins in a board back then. But being able to tell them the anecdotes of from my professional life, I did this and I've been through this, and this part of the design process that I'm currently asking you to do is really valuable. And here's a story from my background, which will sort of prove that to you, I think was really good. I do think that for me, education came second to design. And my passion's always been design. And I wanted to then teach that, which has had an impact on my career more recently, because I sort of got to the point in my career where I was ready for something more. And a lot of people at my level in education at this point would go into senior leadership of a school. And I knew that if I went into senior leadership of a school, I wouldn't be necessarily working within design education anymore. I'd be working in broader education and leadership. And to be honest, I didn't fancy it, because for me, my why is still steeped in design. Yes, there is a second why of education too, but I kind of have two. And as long as I've got both, I'm happy. And I realized that if I kind of continued on that career path into senior leadership, the way my parents had, I would have to move away from that other why, my design why. So that's kind of how I've ended up doing what I'm doing now, which is like a new challenge, a promotion, if you like, but it's very niche in the world of design education, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, design, the word niche, I mean, that nails it in design education. I mean, I speak to many people, within Australia especially, but also the UK. Not so much in the US. I mean, I think because our systems, the UK system and the Australian system, are very similar. But the design teacher pool is getting smaller and smaller, and the skill set that we have, there's not training facilities now. The design and technology areas in the universities have been shut down, so they're not teaching them. Even though a lot of stuff is going to advanced manufacturing and CAD, there's still the need for those traditional hand skills of understanding how products are made and how to get from A to B and all those things. And so it's getting harder and harder to find good design teachers. Are you finding that as well? Is that part of your part of your new role is helping new teachers, or is it more students?
No, definitely. So my new role is split in two, really. So I work 3 days a week for Cleeps, and I keep 2 days a week for myself to do freelance work. And that freelance work predominantly has taken the form of either working in AI in education, quite often AI in design education, but also AI in general education and running CPD for the whole school. And the other part of it is going into schools and helping existing design technology departments to improve, or working for ITT provision, which stands for Initial Teacher Training Provision. So on Thursday, I'm going to be running an initial teacher training program for 4 student teachers who are in the classroom learning how to do it, but they're specifically design and technology teachers. But yes, in the UK, there is a huge recruitment crisis, and it has hit design and technology particularly hard. I think D&T, I think the last time I looked, was 3rd on the list after only physics and computer science for struggling to recruit. So it is a challenge. And like in Australia, we're struggling with courses being closed and specialisms being closed. And more often in my role at Cleeps, we have requests for advice on how to do certain things by design and technology teachers who are not actually trained design and technology teachers. They've been given the subject. So they might be a PE teacher who's been told they have to teach a bit of D&T, or they might be an art teacher who's been asked, because their skill set is close, if they can take design technology for a year because there's just nobody around. So yes, both of my roles are definitely connected to trying to help that particular problem.
Yeah, it sounds like you're needed over here as well. No, because I mean, I, I love to have new. I'd love to have new teachers come out and just because they're there, they want to teach and they want to be passionate about what they're doing, but they get dropped into a classroom with almost no training. And I mean, we've both been through teacher training, and so have so many of our listeners. And what you learn at university doesn't necessarily translate to what you actually do on, once you hit the ground. And then to add to that a specialization where they're not actually trained on that particular specialization must make it extremely difficult for these young teachers that you're interacting with.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but a lot of CPD, continued professional development, in the UK is broad strokes pedagogy, broad strokes education. So as a practicing teacher once qualified, or even in the ECF, which stands for Early Career Framework, which is, your first 2 years, your P plates, if you like, of teaching, even then an awful lot of the materials to train teachers is general pedagogy. So you'll be in a session sitting next to a history teacher, sitting next to an English teacher, and that has its value. Absolutely, teachers need to understand the pedagogical approaches such as questioning and behavior management, etc. But in design and technology, as in all subjects, there are certain things that we do that are different to other subjects, and that requires training too, whether it be health and safety on machines, whether it be understanding the design process, whether it be drawing out creativity from students, engagement for students. There's so many things within design and technology that are specific to us. And some other subjects might have elements of those. So we could share certain things. You could do a creativity and engagement session with your art colleagues or with your drama colleagues, but you wouldn't necessarily need that with your maths colleagues. So there are lots of subject-specific approaches that are not, I don't believe, getting the airtime with new teachers that they should, or that they used to when we trained back, whenever that was, which we might say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So like when I did my teacher training, so there was all the general pedagogy and, how to write a program, how to do this, how to do that, the general day-to-day classroom stuff, which, like you said, is quite important. And we do need to understand it. But also two of my subjects were specialized, and I was very fortunate. They were specialized design and technology subjects. So we would go out to, rather than have the lectures during the day, we would actually go out to different high schools at night, and under the training of some very experienced teachers, they would run us through projects. So we did, I did my woodwork. We did metalwork. We did food technology. I learned how to do quilting. So it was the whole facet of what design and technology can encompass. We're actually shown not only what it is, but how to do it, and then how to tie that into a program and a curriculum and a product, so that we could then see and experience the mistakes that the students will do, so that we know how to work through that. And as we develop our own projects, our new projects, we go, okay, yep, there's going to be a pinch point here, there's going to be a flaw here, they're all going to make a mistake right here, but that's part of the teaching practice. So we teach them those skills of failure in design to learn.
I think it also goes back to the why. We were talking about what's my why for doing what I do. I think that's something that we have to teach our students, is their why. Why are you doing what you're doing? And sometimes the results can, and the pressure of exams can lead the planning. So that means that the why gets a little bit lost, or it gets a little bit warped into the reason you're doing this is so that you can get a GCSE. or why are you doing this? Oh, so I can get a grade 9, miss. Well, actually, no, you're doing it so that your product will be better, so that your design journey will be greatly improved. And the sort of the hoop jumping that comes into high school design and technology, of you have to prove you can do this stage of the design journey, then this stage, then this stage, then this stage, can hammer out some of that that creativity in our students, because their why becomes, I'm doing this because my exam board says I should. And
Yeah.
actually what a specialized design and technology teacher can do, especially one who's had experience, whether it be at university through training or in a previous career, they will understand the value and the why of the design process, and they can really give that to the students and say, the reason you're doing a whole board of designs rather than just focusing on one design is because you might have missed something and you need to iterate, and this is what iterate means, and it doesn't need to be linear. You can jump back and throw that bit in the bin and come back to that bit, and that's okay. And I think that way of thinking, the design process way of thinking, is something that maybe is taught at university to people who are doing a design-based course, and is taught in specific design and technology university PGCE courses, but is not necessarily given to a student who comes from a different degree and goes straight into initial teacher training and then becomes a teacher. They've missed that. What actually is design, and why do we do it, and why are we going through this process? So therefore they can't give that why to the students the same way. And I think that is potentially a big hole in our current system, especially when we're sort of backfilling the subject in both countries with non-specialists who often are trying their absolute best to provide design education, but without that fundamental understanding of the concept of design and the why, they will struggle, and it's not fair on them either, or the children.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. The design process and design thinking, design cycle, however you want to frame it and however you implement it, and sometimes it's a conglomerate of all three. Other times, no, we're just focusing on design thinking and explaining each of those points. But going, yes, well, we've got them in. It starts with empathy and ideate and all those things, but it's not linear. We always circle back, and sometimes it's a zigzag, and there's all these.
And that's
crazy
okay. Things. And it's difficult though, because if your course is being taught by the maths teacher who is not really needed in the maths department because that school happens to be oversubscribed with maths teachers, so they're thrown into design and technology, and this poor teacher comes in and says, right, this is what I've got to teach, then they are going to want to teach it in a linear way, because that's the way they're used to teaching, and that's the way that their subject is structured, and it's going to be completely foreign to them. I think that design technology also has a battle to face in its public relations. So very, very often design technology is seen as quite an old-fashioned subject. It's seen as, a room full of students using wood planers to make bird boxes, and they're doing the same thing that their parents did and their grandparents did. And actually, design and technology is possibly the most forward-thinking subject on the curriculum, and is, if you really pull it apart and think about the concept of design and you think about the concept of technology, both of these are like fundamental pillars of society. Both of them are incredibly forward thinking. Both of them are, driving humanity. And yet we somehow have taken these two things, put them together in the name of a school subject, and it means something completely different. And I don't know, in the US, in Australia, I'm not sure it's the same, but over here there's a bit of a polarization between sort of new camp D&T, let's think about the future, let's use tech, let's use rapid prototyping and 3D printing and AI, and then there's sort of the traditional design technology of, that's just cheating, we should be making things traditionally. And I would say that I find the polarization really heartbreaking, because I personally believe that what we need to do for our students is give them all of it, a huge range of tools for their arsenal, and they should be able to say, well, this particular problem can only be solved by going down a traditional route, and to be understanding exactly, the science behind the wood grain that I need to choose right now. And I think a wood planer is the perfect tool for that. But then another problem might require artificial intelligence and 3D printing and rapid prototyping and resin printing. And I think that I think students should have a little bit of everything. But at the moment, with the recruitment crisis, with the teacher crisis, and with the current polarization of opinion about what the subject should be, I think we've got a little bit lost. It is a bit heartbreaking. Is it the same in Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like and there is that polarization. I love teaching skills. So my background, for me, high school was a social experiment. I was just one of the lads having a laugh, playing footy at lunchtime and causing chaos where I could. And then I went and got a trade. So I'm a toolmaker by trade. So for those who don't know, that's a dying craft as well. So a precision metal machinist. So I was, working down to the microns on certain jobs. So, hundreds of millimeters, down to, fine grinding and all this sort of stuff. But we used advanced manufacturing then. We used CAD back then. So I'm talking very early 90s. So I'm aging myself here. But part of toolmaking was we had this amazing use of traditional tools, but then to augment the job and to push the boundaries of what we're able to do, we used EDM wire cutting, and we used we started doing, I can't remember the terminology, but we were pushing the boundaries within our framework. And some of the older guys were like, no, you can't do that. That's cheating. It's like, it's not cheating. It's using the tools and the arsenal that we have to make the best product and move forward, whilst not forgetting the backstory of, if we don't know how to do that, then we definitely can't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think it's an either or. I don't think it's an either or choice. I think it's using the right tool with the right problem, and understanding your foundations, and then not being afraid to push boundaries. I think that students should have an experience of all of it. But then, by saying that, what I'm doing is I'm making design and technology an absolutely huge subject. And as we've already said, we don't have very many people to teach it. So we need to somehow convince governments of the value of our subject, and the value to society of our subject, and the value to higher education. And it's not just about the student that's going to go off and be an architect or a product designer. It's about the student who is never going to do anything in design ever again, who's going to become a language professor of French. They still need to understand design and technology, because they're still going to be a consumer of product design for life. They're still going to have to navigate through our man-made world and understand their choices as a consumer. So I think we have a really big responsibility to make sure that all students have this subject, and have it as broad and as holistic as possible. But then it's a bit of a pipe dream, because we are struggling for time, and we're struggling for teachers, as we've already said.
Yeah, at time is a massive thing as well. Like I know that we as a subject get less time than what some people would call more important subjects, the math, the science, the English, and is that right? Well, look, I personally think no. I think everyone should have equal access, because like you said, not everyone's going to do design, but not everyone is going to be in languages or mathematicians or physicists. But I think for a student to do whatever they want to do successfully, they need to have a broad understanding of how the world works, how to be a good consumer, how to critically think, how to evaluate something, how to discern what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. and then how to implement that to best suit where they're heading.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we have over here we have choices in year 9 where students get to drop certain subjects and just move on with the subjects that they're going to do exams in. So every year in the summer term, when you have year 9, third year high school, we have a bunch of students who turn around and say, well, I've not chosen this subject, I'm never going to do it again. And I give the same speech, or did give, won't be giving it this year, but used to give the same speech every year, which was, okay, well, you might not be a designer when you grow up, but you will be a consumer and you will be navigating this world, and you don't want to be taken advantage of. You don't want to have a lack of awareness of where things came from or how things were made or why things have been designed the way they have. And also there are some core foundations to our subject that are transferable regardless of whether you're going to go off and have a career in it. Things like empathy, which you mentioned, and user-centered design is transferable across life. Things like understanding sustainability and climate change and the material world and the material world's impact on climate change is incredibly important, possibly the most important thing that we teach. So I think that, we need to somehow convince senior leaders and parents that design and technology is a foundational subject for all. It's not just about those students who are going to go off and be architects and designers and fashion designers in the future.
Yeah, it's so important that they get that experience. And I mean, I'm all for empathy. I mean, I'm an empathetic person myself, and so it's ingrained in me, and I love to bring that in. And being a responsible steward of our environment is I try where I can to model that within the classroom. And we're talking about a good user of a understanding a product. And one of the stories that I love to talk to the kids about is like, why can this craftsman charge $20,000 for a cabinet? I said, because he spends hours making the joints. He doesn't use any glue. He doesn't use any screws. Everything is perfectly crafted, hand fitted, and with an amazing eye for detail. Yes, I can go to IKEA as an example, and they do like the designers in IKEA they're just phenomenal. The way they can just do their knockdown fittings and put it all in a box, and then I can build a 3-door wardrobe that came in a 10-foot by 3-foot box is astounding. But it's getting them to understand it's fit for purpose. This is one, this is the other. Why is the timber that the craftsmen use is takes 100 years to grow a tree, so they have to be very careful with it. They have to use it wisely. IKEA is used in a sustainable fashion. The timber that they use is done in a sustainable way, which is also critically important. So it's just getting that rounded understanding of how the world works and why the world works the way it does sometimes.
Yeah, it's important. And I think that comes down to students understanding the brief and understanding the specification that the designer might have worked to, and being able to work backwards and think, well, why has this product been designed like this? Who was the target market? Why have they designed for that particular person in this way? So, and I think that's just as important for the non future designers as it is for the future designers.
Absolutely, and I think it also creates a passion. A story that I've, a student that I didn't personally teach him. He was like a year ahead of where I was teaching. We were at a selective school. He was a very high achieving, very academic student. He loved doing design and technology, but stopped it at year 10, so fourth form. Went on to become a doctor and a tremendous surgeon, and was very good at it. And then sort of 10 years into his surgical career, he was well established and made, a ton of money. Goes, you know what, I really enjoyed making stuff when I was a kid, and retired from surgery and became a craftsman. And just because he had that
Got some
opportunity, but
fine motor skills there if he was a surgeon.
absolutely. But he had that. If he hadn't have had that experience that we're talking about of being in a classroom with a teacher who was passionate about design and showed them how to make things and did just had that opportunity there, he may have never found that passion that he goes, it's brought me more joy than anything it has in my life. So
Mm.
it and like you've gone from theatre design into design education, and that's brought you a joy that you probably never thought you would have had.
Yeah. It was an interesting journey. It was a long time ago now, that transition, but it was an interesting transition. People who I had trained with in theatre design were quite shocked. What do you mean you want to be a teacher? What do you mean you want to go work in a high school? What do you mean? um, but yeah, it's something you can't really explain. It definitely is a vocation, isn't it? Trying to make a difference, but also trying to instill a passion that you have yourself, and pass that passion over to somebody else, which I definitely think comes from subject specialists in a big way, because we're giving them something we really love. Design technology teachers who don't stand up and say this is the world's best subject, I would be a bit worried. Why are you doing it then?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, you've got a passion for design and design students and design teachers. And how does CLEAPS go into that? You're talking about it talks about a lot of safety and hazard reduction and things like that. So can you just sort of expand on that, how that actually works within the design and technology role?
So CLEAPS is actually an organisation that's been going a really long time. It started in the 60s, and they pride themselves historically for being the guys that got the Bunsen burner into the classroom. They made science education practical and safe. So they brought science to life, essentially. It originally started off by making equipment, selling it to schools, and then it became more advisory and more sort of writing risk assessments and documents and becoming the experts in how to do practical work safely. So sort of the main thing is that CLEAPS wants all students to have a practical hands-on education within subjects that have slight dangers in them. So obviously science was its first subject. Things blow up all the time, chemical reactions, etc. But also then design and technology needed advice, and that spans across all. It spans across all things. Yes, there's machinery advice. Yes, there's how to stop children hurting themselves, chopping fingers off, etc. But also, what I find really interesting is that CLEAPS always tries to stay really up to date with anything coming down the line that schools might be experimenting with. So yes, it is talking about health and safety within traditional tools, but it's also, if something's new is about to be used in the classroom, then CLEAPS has to assess that safety, experiment with it, understand it, write about it, and also advise on, well, is this actually, are the risks actually worth the educational benefit that the student will get? So things like virtual reality, we've invested in headsets and we've been experimenting with virtual reality. Obviously, my passion outside of CLEAPS, one of my passions outside of CLEAPS is AI. So I've been talking about that and the health and safety connotations of it related to the teaching and learning. I've recently been doing a project to do with casting, so practical design, technology, and art, but specifically casting. So looking at things like epoxy resins and eco resins and jasminites, and which ones are easier to use, which ones have educational benefit, which ones are affordable for teachers, which ones have environmental considerations, and then experimenting with them myself and then writing it all up into simple guides that teachers can understand and say, okay, I'm going to use this for this project, or I'm going to use that for this project, or I'm going to have this risk assessment that CLEAPS have provided for this project. So it's all steeped in it's sort of the core is, how can we make practical learning opportunities for students as rich and as beneficial whilst being safe as possible. So
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it because I get to experiment a lot, get to play with stuff, try it all out, and then get to advise schools in, do you know what, you want to teach pewter casting? Here is a way that you can do it that's safe and sustainable, and that all the students will learn the basics of pewter casting in a safe, quick, cheap, easy way. So
Yeah.
that's sort of the research that we do.
Right. I mean, it sounds like a lot of hard work, but also sounds like a tremendous amount of fun. I mean, that's one of the joys of being a design teacher. We just have this amazing opportunity just to experiment and be creative and try new things out to see how we can give our students a tremendous experience in the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think sometimes when I say to my friends and family, "Oh, I'm dealing with health and safety," they think that I'm going to be the no person and that I'm going to be the person that comes in and says you can't do that. Actually, I think it's more like we're the people who try and say yes, but want to say yes in a safe way. So we want things to work in the classroom. We want students to have practical experiences as much as possible. Just trying to mitigate all the risks that come with it.
Yeah. We can't ever um, get rid of any of the risks, but
No.
we can, like you said, we can mitigate them. We can make it as safe and as fun as possible for the students. I remember I was working at one particular place, and as we all have, a student has cut themselves with a chisel. And I had one of the powers that be came down, and he was on the health and safety commission of the school, and said, "Okay, so how did it happen?" I said, "Well, this is how we talked about it. Um, Talked to the student, got him to give me feedback." I say, and yeah, because the thing was, okay, Billy, how did you hurt yourself? He goes, "Because I didn't listen to you and I had my hand in the wrong spot, and you showed me how I should have done it, and so it's my fault." And I'm just like, "Well, thank you. Your fault, no, it's an accident, but at least you have learnt from this."
And
And then
accidents do happen. I mean,
they do 100%. And then, but this particular staff member goes, "Can you not use chisels? Can we take them out of the classroom?" And I'm just like, no, we can't.
but what
But
we can do is risk assess and make sure that we make sure that we give them the explanation as clear as possible. And if the student still hurts themselves, we've done everything we possibly can do, and we'll have a first aid box on the side in case this happens. But sometimes it's going to happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and even if you do everything right, sometimes it just happens.
Sometimes it
it's
happens.
An accident.
Sometimes people get knocked over crossing the road, even when they look both ways. It happens.
Exactly. So you're with Cleeps.
Yeah.
You are in the classroom.
Yeah.
You are in the classroom as such. And you mentioned AI. Now,
Yeah.
we've discussed a lot of stuff. We've talked, and you gave me a tremendous opportunity to be part of the Cleeps magazine with some stuff I was doing with AI about a year ago now. How have you seen the advancements over that year? And how do you see this as a tool that is that will just enhance creativity, or is it something that we just need to be wary of? Or is it a bit of both?
So probably a bit of both. I think like anything, it depends on how it's used. For a really rudimentary comparison, because it's fresh in my head, if you compare it to the chisel, it really does depend on how it's used, doesn't it? I mean, it depends on whether the student's using it appropriately. It depends on whether they've listened. It depends on whether there's guidance in place. It depends on the choice of tool. Is it the right tool for the job, etc., etc. So I think that artificial intelligence comes with huge caveats, but also, as you've probably seen me say on LinkedIn, the creative opportunities for students and the motivation, the engagement, the enhancement of certain parts of the design process are immense. And it's just about using the specific artificial intelligence tool for the specific outcome that you want to achieve. So I have been doing a lot of research and work in that, and I know you have too. We've both looked at things like New Arc AI for taking sketches and rendering them, or taking rudimentary CAD models and rendering them, iterating with different material choices for older students, or simply giving a younger student who may feel like they can't draw a turbo boost of motivation by taking their sketch and putting it through a program like Newark, and then showing them the outcome, and then seeing that magic and seeing that click, going, oh, actually I can draw, actually I can be creative. So there's so many different use cases for artificial intelligence within the design journey. And I think it's really down to the educator to look at this like any other tool and think, well, okay, well, let's balance the risks, let's balance the environmental impact, let's balance the time, and let's work out ultimately the learning value, and whether the learning value is worth some of those other areas being affected. So it's always a balancing act, isn't it? So I personally think artificial intelligence can be used for good and can be used for creativity. It's just all about using it correctly. What do you think? Because you've been using it the same. I mean, that's how we first got in touch, isn't it? That we were, even though we're the other side of the world, we both fell down this incredible tiny niche of design, education, and AI. Its little bubble, which is how we got in touch. So we've both been doing this for over a year now. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's a specific tool for a specific job.
Mm-hmm.
We've used Newark. I finally got around to actually getting an educational license for it, and again, there's so many companies who are out there for a buck, and I'm not sponsored by or given any money or anything like that by Newark, but they put out a statement that they endeavour to keep free use for education, which I think in this day and age is fantastic. So all credit to them. But yeah, it's one of those tools where I can't. If I had $1 for every time a student said I can't draw, I tell you
Yeah.
what, I'd be somewhere else. That's for sure.
Yeah, me too.
But it gives them, and it's trying to explain to the students, well, you can draw because you can write your name, so you can put a straight line and a curve together, and you can create meaning. So you can draw, but you might not be able to communicate that effectively. So this is going to help you communicate more effectively. So tell me what you think, and that's the great thing about the generative AI. Like, as we're talking about Newark, they can give a rudimentary sketch, but then they can use that creative language that they have to fully explain what they want it to do, and then they get this amazing result of, oh, hold on, wow, while I might not be able to draw, I can still be tremendous, well, I might be able to draw well, I can still communicate really
Yeah.
effectively, and get my ideas across, and then it gives them that little go forward to go, oh, okay, so that's what it actually looks like, and it actually builds that skill of, so that's what it looks like. So then they try and draw better, and then they
Yeah.
try and render a little bit better,
And they can
and then
iterate. They can iterate with their prompt. They can iterate with their sketch and put it back in. They also, I think that there is certain learning opportunities that come from some of these tools. Things like oracy skills, literacy skills, vocabulary development. If they're writing a prompt and they think that this isn't exactly what I want, well, then you can go back to the student and say, well, let's open up a thesaurus and think about different words that might mean the same thing that are slightly different, and let's see how the AI tool interprets this vocabulary or this sentence structure. Or so I think there's lots of sort of learning opportunities within it that are not necessarily explicit in the first instance.
yeah, exactly. It's one of those. Yeah, it's a specific tool for a specific job. And look, I use it very sparingly in the classroom because, I mean, one, you're pressed for time, so you're trying to explain everything, and then a lot of you've got to make sure that your policies and safety is in place, to protect the students. And so you're pressed for time. but it's often you give the student, say, okay, well, you give me all your stuff, you give me your sketches, or I'll draw something quickly and show them this is what it can do, this is where we're heading, is this the idea that you wanted? A lot of schools I know worry about student facing AI,
Mm.
with the inherent risks that brings, but with the right training, with the right supervision, and that's why I do a lot of the on my device with the student. I'll get them to do stuff. I mean, they use Adobe, the Adobe suite quite a bit, so a lot more comfortable with that, because they have,
Yeah.
I guess, a few more guardrails in because it's targeted for education. So that's what they do. So I'm a little bit more comfortable with that. But you don't often get the results that you get with another product. So it's
Yeah,
that catch
again, it's
22.
about the balancing, isn't it? It's about the educator themselves or their institution taking responsibility for that due diligence of, okay, which products, which tools are going to benefit our students and our cohort, which might be different to the school down the road. What will impact them the most, and then balancing that. The financial impact of it, the environmental impact of it, the everything else, and in particular, is it safe? Does it have guardrails? Has it proven itself within the education community to have young people's interests at heart?
Absolutely, absolutely. So with it being there's so many worries, and we hear so much beat up in the media about how it's a tremendous threat to society and humankind. And look, I'm sure there's nefarious players, and they're going to do horrible things with it, and some students are going to be, and I've already heard stories about some things that they're doing with it, which are just terrible. But I think it comes down to, again, us educating the students. And I think one of the things that really comforts me, well, comfort is probably maybe not the best word, but comforts me at this point in time with generative AI in education, is that people like you and me and so many others that we talk to regularly, are asking the questions. They're putting stuff out there. They're going, what about this? They're challenging. They're not just accepting. And before they even bring it into the classroom, they're just pushing the boundaries outside to see what it can do. So I think that brings a little bit of comfort, rather than, unfortunately, what happened 20 odd years ago when social media was just dropped like a bomb. And oh yeah, no educators that I remember
No,
actually looked at it. They just like, oh no, it's just a passing fad. Don't worry about it. It's just one of those internet thingies, and it'll be fine. But we're
yeah,
asking the question, I think, is fantastic.
I do think that maybe it comes from the fact that we lived through that, and we were kids when the internet happened, and when the early social media happened, when the first mobile phones came out. We were in education ourselves, and then I think all of that life experience has now meant that the educators of today are going, okay, well, this isn't going to go anywhere because none of that stuff went anywhere, and we can predict that this is going to fly. How is it going to fly, and how can we help it go in a direction that we're happy with and comfortable with, and how can we help it go in a direction that we're happy for students to use? Because I think, that's the bottom line for all educators, is that we care about kids and we care about their or I'd like to hope that it's the bottom line for all educators.
Yeah,
That we care
absolutely.
about kids and we care about young people and the value they're getting from us and our institutions and our curriculums and any edtech tools that we might put in front of them. What value are they getting from that? If you really think about it, the student is the client and we're providing them with a service. And if we're using a third party to help provide that service, if that third party be Google or Newark or Adobe Firefly or whoever, are we then assessing that third party and going, well, is it going to give our ultimate client, the kid, the student, the very, very, very best value that we can give them. And sometimes I think, sometimes, and this is really cynical, but sometimes that relationship, that sort of triangle, doesn't happen, and that the student, who should be the absolute foundation and should be the absolute core, comes after.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is a really cool tool, look what it can do. Like, yeah, but how, but what's the kid going to get out of it? What's the student going to get from that? What learning comes from this? How is this going to move them forward? But also, I think that there's a flip side to that, is that group, the student, they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
They're gonna do it anyway. They can do it outside. They're gonna learn all this stuff, whether we teach it to them or not. We just have to guide them in the direction that we think is ethical and safe and beneficial to whatever our learning outcome is. But they're going to do it anyway, so we need to stay on top of it to make sure that it is safe. And I think that because students are going to do it anyway, there is that fear that AI is going to mean that creativity is dead. It means that the essay's died on its feet, that they're all going to cheat,
Yeah.
that plagiarism's through the roof, etc., etc. And I think that it's true, but it's also a massive misconception, because the teacher, the educator, has to take responsibility to change the assignment. They have to realize that, okay, they now have this tool, therefore the thing that we wanted them to do needs changing. It's not the tool that needs changing, it's what we were asking them to do. We've asked them to write an essay for homework. They've all come back and got ChatGPT to do it. That's the fault of the kid and ChatGPT. Is it? Or is it the fault of the educator not being up to date enough to realise that's what they're all going to go home and do? You know, a really savvy educator would go, right, here's your essay question. Go home, write your essay. I know most of you are going to use AI generators to help you with this. And you, just like 5-10 years ago, I know you're probably going to Google this when you get home. But when you're back in the classroom, we're going to have a controlled environment. You're going to write the counter argument to your essay. So to really make sure that you understand the actual content and that you're not just prompt monkeys. So I think exactly. I think that it's about the educator rethinking the assignment. One of the things I often say in my whole school AI training is, because whenever you do whole school AI training, there's always going to be a handful of people in the room who are reluctant to embrace this, who are going to say, well, I want to ban it. I don't want it involved in my education. It's not allowed in my classroom.
Yeah, banning it is the best way to get the student to use it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is a huge argument for it. But one of the other arguments I use is that you can't ban a calculator from the world of maths. And when the calculator came out, maths teachers may have said, I don't know if they did, but they may have said, oh my gosh, maths is dead. Look at this tool that can now calculate for us. What's the point of maths anymore? Now we've got a calculator. And actually, that's not what happened. Maths got harder. We then said, now we've got this calculator, we're going to have a calculator paper and a non-calculator paper, so that we're still checking mental arithmetic, but now we're going to really push in the calculator paper the next level of maths, the formulas, the maths behind the calculation. So it's about rethinking that assignment. And I think AI does that. So any essay-based assignment should really be thinking about, well, how can we make it so that either artificial intelligence becomes part of the assignment or becomes sort of the opposition to the assignment, and redesigning it.
Yeah, absolutely. I ran a CPD not too long ago at a school on AI and assessment, and it was and one of my points was, if AI can do your assignment or your assessment within 3 minutes, I said most of them will do it within 30 seconds, but if it can do it within 3 minutes, it's a terrible assessment. Get rid of it. You need to redesign it, or maybe not redesign the whole thing, but you might need to change it. And they're like, well, how do we change it? I said, well, personalize it, make it a local, have your broader topic. Yes, they might want to write an essay, But these things are based on worldwide data, not on what happens in your local suburb. So get them to personalize part of the assessment, or get them to give them free reign, and but they have to explain the whole thing and how they used it and how they came up with their reasoning to ask the questions and to put the prompts in. And so there's a myriad of ways that you can do it, but they're like looking at me like, but can't we just like ban it? And I'm like, it's not, no,
No,
too late for that.
it's too
Too
late.
late for that. The genie's
Yeah,
out of the bottle, the cat's out of the
yeah.
bag, and
Horses
and,
bolted. All
and
the other cliches.
yeah, and the kids know it. And I mean, look, they've been using, generative artificial intelligence for a lot longer than, since it was released in November of 2022 with their Snapchat
Mhm.
AI, things like that. So they've got a head start on us. We're playing catch up to them. So um,
Yeah, I think it's naive to assume that artificial intelligence can be banned. I also think, if we bring it back to our community, I think it's naive to think that artificial intelligence can be left out of the design process, because professional designers are going to lean into this stuff
it's
to
amazing.
open doors, to take their designs up a level, to iterate in different directions quicker. If you have a design and you can iterate it in 25 different directions in a day, you can, with using AI to enhance that, each of those 25 outcomes can then be iterated in 25 other different directions, and you end up with a wealth more starting places for your design process. And I think that, yes, there are certain things in AI that can be considered to be erasing the students. Well, if I say that, an exam board might say a student shouldn't be using AI to produce the design, I think that that's reasonable. But I do think that I've been working with some of the UK exam boards to really pin down the advice given to design teachers. And really, the bottom line is that if you use AI in your design process, then you just cite your source the same way as if you would use any other resource. So if you would go down to the library and look at the work of existing designers and trace over something and take it back to your classroom or your design studio and work on it and present it as a new design, then is that plagiarism? No, it's taking inspiration. If you Google different things and you put them all onto a mood board and you look at that mood board and you use it for inspiration, is that plagiarism? No, it's using it for inspiration. So it's exactly the same if you use image generation and you take those images and you feed them into your design process. If you were to hand in one of those generated images as your design, then it's plagiarism, just the same way as if you were to take off an image off Google and drop it in and say it's your own design, or just the same way as if you were to photocopy a page from a library book and say it's your own design. I think that if we compare it to other processes, it can become quite common sense of what is plagiarism and what is not, and which bits in your coursework you would cite and which bits you wouldn't cite. And I think that there's an opportunity for students to show critical analysis by saying, I asked this AI tool to generate XYZ for me, maybe a body of text or maybe an image, and I did that with this prompt, and this is my created prompt, this is my work. It then produced this, and then here is my critical analysis of what it's produced. As far as crediting that in an assessment, the prompt would be worthy of marks, the output wouldn't because it's not theirs, but the critical analysis would. And that process wasn't there before, so would therefore be an opportunity for those students to explore down an avenue that they wouldn't have otherwise explored. So again, don't ban it, just be savvy about what it is and how it fits into the assessment, and where and what you can credit for, and what's the student's own thinking and what's the AI's thinking.
Yeah,
And I do
exactly.
think it can be, when you really, really unpick it like that, it's quite common sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a real world example of that. I hate that term. I shouldn't use it, but an industry example of that is my eldest son is in video game design, so he does environment and prop art. Um, And one of the um, instructions from one of the largest gaming companies said you can use artificial intelligence to generate concepts. Initially, this particular company was paying for the license, or for the license to use it, but then they've just gone, no, we're not paying that anymore. It's just getting too expensive. But you can use it, but not one single piece of that art can go into the game. And they cited, and like in education, you go, well, if you're taking that and claiming it as your own, then we've got an issue. And for the gaming companies, it was, well, if you're using a generated image and dropping it in, we can't actually copyright the whole game because there's something there that wasn't generated by us. So the businesses that these students are going to be going into, whether it's law or video game design or medicine or whatever it is, it's like you can use it, but you can't just cut and paste and drop it in.
No.
There's got to be a human in the loop there somewhere.
Yeah, and you can maybe use it for inspiration, use it to help your thought processes, try stuff out, and then bring it back and do your own. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what we do, and in the classroom we go, let's get the inspiration. Let's prior to this, and we still do. It's like, do a Google search, find some existing products, draw it. What's good from that, what's good from this, mash it up, and come up with your own design. So, and things, AI just helps us do that a little bit quicker. I'd love to get into the sustainability issues that generative AI has. Again, I want to be respectful of your time. So if you happen to
that's fine.
chat a little bit longer.
So you might have seen that I posted something on LinkedIn just this week about that, because it has been bothering me that, and I said earlier about balancing the use of any AI tool. Is it safe? Is it affordable? But also, is it environmentally okay? Like if the students are generating images for the sake of generating images, could that environmental impact be better used for something that has more value? Generating images for a learning objective would be better in the balance than just doing it for the sake of it. So I think, I have been struggling with the environmental impact, because sustainability, I think, and climate change education should be an absolute foundational pillar to design education, because as Design Declares, who you might have heard of or seen, Design Declares calls the climate emergency like the biggest brief of our time. Design Declares are a collective of professional designers who've signed up to sort of declare that this is an emergency. And them saying that it's the biggest brief of our time really resonated with me, because it is the biggest problem coming down the hill at all of us, and even more so at the young people in front of us, who are turning and facing us, saying to us, well, I'm worried about this, I'm anxious about this, I've seen this on the news, I've read this in my book that I'm reading or whatever, and they're frightened by it. So it's our responsibility to mitigate that by giving them the tools to be able to fix the problems that are coming at them. And the responsibility of thinking about AI's impact on climate change is with us as well. And it's something that I'm really looking into at the moment. It was really interesting, actually, putting that out on LinkedIn, reading what everybody's responses were, but also seeing that there wasn't as much traction on the post as there's been in the past when I've posted like wow AI images. If I've posted like a wow, look at what AI can do, I'll have like 100 likes, and then I post, but maybe AI is not good for the environment, and it suddenly goes a little quiet. And I think, I wonder if other people are worrying about this, or whether there's a slight head in the sand aspect to this. I'm not sure. So something that I'm going to carry on talking to people like yourself about, because I do think it's important we do explore it more.
Yeah, because I mean, you hear so much. I mean, there's the processing power that is used. I mean, the amount of energy just to get this computer generated stuff out there is phenomenal. But then we have to look at, so they're trying to make it faster and better for us, for the consumer. So then they got to, develop more computer chips, and then they're going, well, okay, well, what rare earth metals are we dragging up? And then how are we generating the power to do that? And then what are we sacrificing in order for speed? And it just sort of cycles. It's almost that snowball effect of, you ask one question, and I think to a certain extent you are probably right. There's probably a lot of people who are going, yeah, just the head straight into the sand, because they don't want to think about it because it's too scary a thought. I mean, if we look at the past of various products that were there to better mankind, all of a sudden we go, oh, hold on, they weren't actually good. Look what they've done. They've, the toxic this and the landfill on that, and the degradation to the rainforest. And whilst it's made life faster and maybe a little bit easier, was that worth the cost?
It's the balance, isn't it? It's all about the balance of using this appropriately, being aware that if I use this, does the benefit outweigh the negative impact on it? It's about value, isn't it? It's like, is this worth the money? Is this worth the time? And is this worth the environmental impact? And the third one is difficult to answer, because it comes down to, well, could this potentially benefit sustainability and climate change in the long run? Am I empowering a group of students to use these tools to one day be able to fix this big problem? Am I giving them more powerful tools to solve the problems that are coming their way? But if I keep the tools back from them, I'm going to have less impact myself, making the problem that they're eventually going to have to solve worse. This is kind of a philosophical question, isn't it? It's really difficult. It's one to wrestle with. But I think in the first instance, what I'm going to try and do is think, well, what's the balance? Like, is this just doing this for the sake of the gimmick? Or am I doing this for a real opportunity to get these students to learn something really impactful? But it is difficult, because it's so addictive to use as well, and it's so fantastic to use, and it's got so many benefits. It's just sort of this niggle in the back of our heads of, yes, but what damage are we doing? The unseen damage, and can we rectify that somehow, and can we balance that somehow?
Yeah, and I think to my point earlier, where we were talking about, if people are asking the questions, so I think that's going to help. And I think the fact that you are asking the questions and you're thinking about that before you actually let the students loose and you talk to them about it, there's the benefit there, because already you're going, well, here's an amazing tool and it can do all these fantastic things, but we have to use it carefully. We have to use it wisely. Like with 3D printing, I mean, it's a fantastic tool, and we could iterate constantly with and 3D print models. But wouldn't it be better to make 100 cardboard models that then it could be recycled, rather than having plastic, which we already know is very hard to recycle and has a lot more impacts than someone throwing a pallet full of cardboard into landfill. It's going to break down, it's going to do all those things and not have as a negative impact as a plastic would. So it's the same thing with AI. It's like, how do we use the resource?
So I've been looking, as I said at the beginning, I've been looking into casting and different materials that we can cast in a classroom. And one of the sort of the big trendy things to do that's all over TikTok and Instagram and etc. is resin tables, river tables. and how beautiful they look, and then students will see those on their social medias, and they'll come in and say, I want to do something similar, I want to have that effect in my A-level project or my GCSE project. And so that's one of the reasons I've been looking into it, is, well, how can we do this in a classroom safely? How can we make sure that the risk assessment's in place, but also then how can we balance the environmental impact of making something out of epoxy resin that's not biodegradable? Are there alternatives that the students could use? Are there sort of caveats that we could say to the student, only use this in those sort of fine craft projects that are going to be passed down for generations and last 100 years, rather than any sort of fast knockdown pieces that are going to be thrown away? You don't want epoxy resin to be in any disposable products. You want it to be in solid products that can last a long time. And those considerations coming at an early stage from the educator can then be instilled in the student of, let's discuss our material choices, let's discuss which materials we're going to use for this job, thinking of the life cycle of this product that we have. And I think it's easier for us as design and technology teachers to do that when it's a physical object or a physical material in front of us. It gets really hard when it's a digital tool to really have that tangible feeling about the impact on the environment. It's very easy for us to say, oh yeah, guys, use pine, don't use mahogany, because pine grows faster and the transport's quicker, and and here are all the reasons why softwood's better than hardwood for the environment. Unless you want to have a real longevity to your project, and then the balancing scales might be worth it. So much harder to have that tangibility when you're saying, oh guys, you might not want to render that image, or you might not want to put that on runway for the sake of it, to make it look more beautiful than just using Midjourney, or you might not want to animate it in this way using artificial intelligence just to get more likes on social media. It's really difficult. That balancing act is really, really difficult when it's an ethereal digital thing.
It does make it difficult, because the kids just want to punch. Even with using Firefly, the kids are just punching away, just like this and this and this and this and this. And I'm just like, hey, slow down. Because I want your creativity in there, not just your work. I want you to try and come up with some fun stuff as well. So, I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours.
Definitely.
About design and AI and sustainability and all these amazing things that we have the opportunity to teach and to instill into not only our students, but also our fellow educators as well. So I do want to be respectful of your time. You do have your hands full. So we've gone down some amazing paths, and we've talked about some amazing things, and talking with like-minded educators, especially like-minded design educators, is always fantastic. It always brings
isn't it?
always brings joy to my heart. So just to finish off, I've got a few questions just to get to know Trudy Barrow just a little bit better. The first question that we have, and I wrap this up with all my guests, is the first question I have, and this is just across the board. It's no before midday or after midday type of question. It's like, what is your favorite drink? Diet Coke.
Diet Coke, for those listening, I just showed it to the camera. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure, really. I'm not a tea and coffee drinker, so I have to get my caffeine kick somewhere else. So I normally have a bottle of Diet Coke on me.
An English lass who doesn't drink tea.
I know. It's terrible.
Well, we just had a student from Leeds live with us for the last year. Did a semester abroad, and she lived with us. And before she came across, I said, "Well, what is there anything that you really want?" And she goes, "Can you just make sure you got some Yorkshire tea when I get there?" and now that's all I drink. So our dear friend Dr. Nick Jackson is just like, "Yep, that's it. You're stuck on it now."
Yeah, for life.
Absolutely. So Diet Coke is your guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Another question that I have is, what is a challenge that you have for anyone listening today? It could be large, could be small, it could be something that we've talked about, or it could just be, just a challenge that you'd like to put out there for the world.
A challenge.
A challenge.
Ooh. Do something for yourself that keeps your creativity going. So I think that sometimes as design educators we do an awful lot of education and not a lot of designing, and I think we need to keep that personal bucket topped up. So do some of your own work, and that can take any form. So for example, over the summer I took up knitting, much to the teasing of my husband, who has decided that I've aged overnight. But just, he's like, oh, okay, little granny sitting next to me doing her knitting. But I actually think that, just doing something mindful, productive, creative in front of the telly has just been really nice for me. It's mindful. It's got a bit of creativity, and I just do it just for me, although everybody wants a scarf now. And I've really enjoyed it, and it's mine, so I think doing something for yourself, that has if you're a creative mind, keeping your creative bucket topped up by taking up a creative hobby of some kind is important.
Couldn't agree more. I've got a lot of, I'm sitting here behind me, you can see probably a whole bunch of tools hanging on the bench, and that's just, this is my work area, this is my creative space, and I've got art on the wall, and I do all sorts of stuff. So 100%, if you're out there, do something creative, just go and make. Is
good for the soul.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, do you have a favorite quote, a mantra, something that sort of that's held fast to you?
So a recent one would be Melissa McBride's quote that she says a lot, which is to meet them where they are. I think I've kind of held that one close since I first heard her say it. I think it would have been at Disrupted, which is a conference over here. I think, meeting the students where they are, coming to them rather than expecting them to come to us and our generation, saying, what how can I make this accessible for you and your generation, is important. It has led me to spend last week learning how to edit health and safety TikTok videos, because I'm trying to meet them where they are and make things tangible and accessible for a different generation. I think that there's an arrogance that comes with age of young people should do it our way. I think that the meet them where they are quote really, really works for education, because again, like the ultimate client, the ultimate person who we're doing this for is the young person. So coming to their level is important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I have read that several times, and I'm yet to catch up with Melissa. I'd love to have her as a guest. So
yeah, she's great.
Trying to pin her down is a bit of a challenge. And she's just doing so much great things, so many great things for education and for her students, in just new and exciting ways that are breaking the norms of education. So
yeah,
she's definitely meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
Now, wouldn't be the Tattoo Teacher podcast if I didn't ask you, do you have any tattoos?
I don't, but I'm 40 in a few weeks, and I've been thinking about maybe now is the time. Although there is that, if I do it, then my kids will definitely want to do it when they, So no, I don't have any tattoos. But you never say never.
Never, exactly. Well, yeah, with your kids wanting to do it, my kids did, and I took them all for their first tattoos. So,
oh,
so yeah, that's but yeah, it's one of those things where, as you can see, I've got one or two embellishments. So yeah, it can get addictive. So but
once you pop, you can't stop.
Yeah, exactly, and it's one of my creative outlets as well. So I come up with, or I have inspiration, and I take it to an artist, and we talk, and we come up with an idea, and sometimes it's just, this is what I want, but other times it's like, here's my idea, just go for it. So it's another creative outlet for for me. So,
Brilliant.
and last but certainly not least, if people wanted to get in contact with you, find out more about you, your freelance work, your work with Cleeps, and yeah, just discuss design. Where's the best place to get in contact with you?
So LinkedIn is a brilliant place to find me. I check LinkedIn most days. I do have a website, which is just my name, so www.trudybarrow.com. I think, yeah, social media wise, I use Instagram. I'm Trudy B underscore DNT. I'm using Twitter less and less. Just started a Blue Sky, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, LinkedIn is probably, and my website, probably the best places.
Oh, brilliant! I'll make sure I put links to those in the show notes.
Thank you.
Well, Trudy, it has been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everything that you're doing for design technology education. We'll have to get you over to this side of the world one day.
I would love to. I love talking to you because it's so nice to find somebody so far away that shares such a similar mindset and has the same interests. It's really nice. So yeah, this is because of LinkedIn, really, isn't it? The global community.
Absolutely, yeah. LinkedIn and
And
AI.
our little niche. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Trudy, thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. Enjoy what is left of the English summer,
Thank you.
which is probably not much at all. So, but enjoy.
Well and truly over.
And again, I thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, it would mean so much to me if you could either like, follow, and subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. The music was by DJ Fruit Salad. Thanks again for listening. Stay cool. Be blessed.